Hello and welcome to the Angry Microwave. I'm Brad and with me is Callum. As we said in the last video, we are currently moving into our studio space, but we wanted to address something which is coming out in the news today, which is something we touched on slightly in our last video, which was about the potential of cinema chains collapsing or closing up shop, whether temporary or permanently. And today it was announced that Cineworld, one of the world's largest cinema chains,
so they're Regal in America.
Yeah, they've got chains in the UK, Ireland, USA. They're all over the world, aren't they?
Yeah.
And so I'll throw it over to Callum to kind of talk about the stats slightly. We're going to talk about what this could mean for the future of cinema. But first of all, just wanted to say, this video isn't to try and glamorize anything. This is just to talk about people that are working in the cinemas, because people are going to lose their jobs, which is heartbreaking. We want nothing more than for cinemas to flourish, really.
Yeah, I also recommend checking out the Cineworld Action Group on Twitter and Facebook. They're the kind of the newly formed union that has been organised to support the employees of Cineworld. So definitely check them out. And If there's any way we can support, I'm sure they'll be sharing links over the next few days. Oh, and also these are all our personal views. We're not representatives of companies we work for, or any of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
that said, I did used to work for a cinema 5 years ago, and it's my personal view is that it's really devastating that this is happening, because it's probably one of the best jobs that I ever had. And again, we need to bear in mind when we're talking about the potential future for cinema distribution, for film releases, we're not papering over the cracks, or we are saddened by these job losses.
I mean, and at the end of the day, we feel like this is a discussion that needs to be had by a film channel. Because if we were ignoring it, I think that's even worse, because we're saying that these jobs and these people that make our cinema experience actually happen, is not really worthwhile, when it definitely is. All the staff in my local cinemas, I have so many chats with them about films. Yeah. And they just make the experience what it is. Yeah. So,
and I've got friends that work in so many different cinema chains. But again, we're going to get to the stats. So you've got a few stats over there with what this means. So again, Cineworld are talking about, it hasn't been officially announced yet, but
we're expecting that tomorrow at 8 AM when the stocks open. Yeah. There's a thing where they're not allowed to make announcements when the stocks are closed. So we're all expecting that at 8 AM tomorrow. It'll come out saying they're closing. And the article, so it was originally a Times article that broke the news late last night. And they're saying that it'll be from this week. They're looking to do it very immediately, as soon as possible. Yeah. And that's going to be 5,500 jobs in the UK lost. And they're going to be forcing redundancy. So it's not even like they're going to be furloughed or paid a certain amount. Their jobs are fully gone. Yeah. Which is absolutely insane. And also, it's 25% of the screens in the UK. Right. So it's a massive chunk of screens, and it's
1 in 4 cinemas just won't be open.
Yeah, which is devastating, and it's just there's so many jobs lost, and it's just the whole situation is absolutely tragic, and the way this has come around.
The one thing that I feel about this, or one thing that I'm kind of assuming, is that I know nothing officially has been announced yet. Some people are saying they're going to close until Bond comes out. Some people are saying they'll reopen after Christmas. The issue with something like this, when you are getting rid of 5,500 jobs, you're not going to be looking at opening anytime soon.
Especially with the fact they're paying out redundancy, you're looking at paying 2 to 3 months' wages for these people anyway. Yeah. So, but viably, it's going to be 3 months plus, because if not, they're paying those people wages anyway. Yeah. But there's still so many questions around it. So whether Picturehouse is going to close, so they're saying all Cineworld cinemas, and Picturehouse is encompassed in that, so we're not sure. Because
same as Regal Cinemas in the USA. We've got Picturehouse over here, which obviously is under the Cineworld umbrella. And so if they are looking at closing those, we're not just talking about big multiplexes. Picturehouses are actually very different from a Cineworld, aren't they, in what they'd show.
Their programming and their culture, definitely.
Yeah. But I read somewhere that for the first half of this year, Cineworld had a $1.3 billion loss, which is something you can't sustain. There are a lot of figures being thrown around, especially on social media, about, well, they're a big company, they should just stay open, they're going to be alright for money. This is a company that is very possibly facing
Well, the problem
closure, isn't it?
Well, the problem is all with cinema chains, same as AMC, is that they all invested heavily in cinemas over the past few years, and they were purposely going to make a loss for a few years before they did that. So we see it with Odeon Limitless, their like monthly scheme. The Cineworld monthly scheme's also been the longest running, I think maybe 20 years now.
Yeah, it was one of the first ones to do it in America as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it was news to me that apparently they run that at a loss. And then they hope to get the kind of like back in concessions.
Yeah.
And this is the thing with Cineworld. I know we're going off on a tangent, but as a Cineworld member, and our local cinema is a Cineworld, to be like completely transparent.
And it only opened recently, didn't it?
Yeah, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's all quite new. And also Cineworld Ashford up the road, that's also getting a full refurb at the moment and an IMAX. So God knows what the situation of that's going to be, because the groundwork's already been done.
Yeah.
And they've just gone vertical. But like, Cineworld makes most of their money from concessions.
Yeah.
And like, their concessions aren't good.
No.
Like I know this is a really weird tangent, but like, they make most of their money from concessions. And in the middle of a pandemic, I'm not going to risk my health. Like, I already go to cinemas at risk. But eating food in a cinema when that food isn't even like nice, it's like there's such a loss, like money wise, for them. And I think that's going to be like one of the factors about why, is because they're not getting that concession sale. So even if they could get people through the door, they would need that concessions on top.
One thing I will say is that in my experience of going back to Cineworld since they've reopened during the pandemic, is that the staff members have been nothing but great. They've done their bit,
and everyone's worn masks.
Everyone's worn masks.
Everything.
They have honestly been great, which is why it makes the whole situation sad, because it's not like I'm not going to miss it, because the people there are, they're doing their best. They're cleaning things. They're greeting customers with a smile. I'm assuming you can't really see it, but if we go to what the government can do, or what the government should do, so the Eat Out to Help Out scheme did save so many chains and even independent restaurants during this, and that's something the government offered. We haven't seen anything like that, because even the arts bailout fund, I don't know if that's the right term, but the arts fund they got, that was such just a generic general lump sum that went to the arts. As an industry, cinema exhibition, film exhibition and distribution is going to really, really suffer, not just because of what we've seen with Cineworld, but just the pandemic. Like you said, people aren't going to feel comfortable going out eating, especially if it's not going to cost them £8 for a large combo. They're not going to.
Well, this is the thing as well. Eat Out to Help Out, it gave people the trust to go back to restaurants, and those people have continued to go to restaurants since that scheme has finished.
Yeah.
The problem is that everybody thought Tenet was going to be that, when it never was.
Yeah.
Tenet is not a family film. And they need that, Bond is kind of family, so that would have worked. But they need a Black Widow or a Wonder Woman to gain that trust of people to go back to cinemas. And then people will start going back more regularly, because they would have been tempted in.
Yeah.
And the problem is that film hasn't come yet, and it's not going to come. We've seen so many films leapfrog each other on dates, we were talking about that before. And also everyone's blaming Bond for this move. Bond was never meant to be in this position, don't forget. It was meant to be Black Widow.
Yeah.
That was next.
Well, Bond was meant to be released months ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, but then that moved quite far out, and then Black Widow was meant to be released in October.
No, I do understand why people are saying, well, Bond moving has basically single-handedly caused the collapse of cinema exhibition. Again, that's not quite true, but we can't afford for companies like MGM or Universal to start losing money, because then really our films will only come from one place, and they're from the streaming services.
And the thing is, it's mad money. So in the UK, Bond probably would have taken about 200-300 mil in the UK, and bear in mind the government has only offered 1.3 or 4 billion total.
Yeah.
The government can't afford to subsidise that box office gross to the studios.
And a lot of the money that the government has given to the arts, a majority of that goes to theatres. Now, I do understand that, because theatres themselves, obviously, they're not going to see anyone coming through the door anytime soon. But something needs to be done about cinema exhibitors. There's just no.
It's such a weird thing. It's one thing supporting the cinema staff and having a furlough scheme, which I think they should have. Definitely, there should have been a targeted furlough scheme extended to these industries. But that's half the problem. The other half is getting those films to come back in.
Yeah.
And that just isn't going to happen. So on to our next kind of bit of the argument. Curzons are kind of thriving at the moment because they're showing the streamers films.
Yeah.
And I was reading in Variety earlier an article about the whole Cineworld situation. And the boss of Cineworld is just refusing to even enter conversations with Universal to shorten the windows.
Yeah.
So there is an argument that the higher ups aren't helping themselves. Like they're not even engaging in these conversations of having a shortened window.
Yeah.
So you kind of need to give a bit at the moment, and they just don't seem to be doing that. Like AMC in the States have kind of given way and had a shortened window, but Cineworld, because they own most of the screens, they're just not moving or engaging in those conversations. And I feel like they've really shot themselves in the foot, not at the expense of the higher ups, but at the expense of their kind of actual workforce, which is devastating to see. There could have been Borat 2 in cinemas this month, if they had been open to that.
Yeah.
And all these other big
because it's
Netflix
going to Amazon Prime, they're not willing to have that conversation.
If I was Amazon, why would I constantly try when they've previously tried that? You wouldn't give them the time of day, especially when they're not even entering into shortened window conversations with the likes of Universal.
And one thing I will say, which kind of maddens me more than anything else, because if I was in this position, like I said, I used to work in a cinema, so if this happened to me, I would be so angry. But a majority, if not all, of the cinema employees, not the ones at the top of the company or the ones that work in HR or anything like that, the actual cinema employees found out about the potential job losses and closure of the company and of these cinemas. They found out through Twitter.
Again, it's happened before when they started.
They shouldn't. They need to communicate with their staff, because you're also losing a big chunk of loyalty from your employees.
Well, the thing is, now I'm quite ashamed to be a Cineworld member, which is completely the opposite of a year ago. You see how other cinemas have treated their staff, and it's just so much better. We understand they're a huge company, but there's a level of communication we need to have.
Yeah.
And the fact this got leaked to the press on Saturday night, you telling me you couldn't have waited till Wednesday, and everything's just so immediate. They're looking at closing it this week. Which is ridiculous.
The only
there's no notice.
thing I'd say to that is it some kind of strong arming that they're doing to the government, where they're trying to force the government's hand for a bailout? Where it's the same as what Virgin have done, where they're look at all these immediate redundancies or mass, not firings, but mass redundancies and job losses, unless you help us out.
But then unfortunately this government doesn't respond to that, especially for this kind of industry. The government have basically deemed tourism, creative arts as unsustainable jobs at the moment. I think that was Rishi Sunak's actual words, that they were unviable jobs.
And that he's, when he was saying that there will be job losses, maybe this is what he was talking about.
But 5,500 jobs, and for something that could just be if those wages were subsidised, then maybe Cineworld would have gone, okay, so we're better having ourselves open at the moment and trying new kind of stuff in terms of films. But even their programming has been all over the place recently. Picturehouse have had, although same company, Picturehouse have kind of had actual strands. View's got horror films on throughout the whole of October. I went to see Carrie yesterday, and there were quite a few people in there. And it's just Cineworld has no strategy at the moment about what they're programming, which is again hitting their workforce, because people don't know what's coming out. And I also think Tenet may have done more harm than good, because if you looked at the schedules over the past 3 to 4 weeks, which is what these decisions would have been made against that data, Tenet block booked most of those screens where they were only showing Tenet. And we are probably the biggest film fans and the kind of people they would expect to go. And I haven't seen Tenet in 3 weeks. I think I saw it a few times in the first week, and I haven't been back since.
I mean, we're the kind of people that would go and see a film multiple times anyway. The issue I think that filmmakers are now going to face, especially people like Chris Nolan and not even Scorsese anymore, because he's still on Netflix original, isn't he? But people like a Chris Nolan, you just can't have the viewpoint now that you're going to run a cinema release and just run things the old archaic way. You need to be open. Unfortunately, as much as I love the cinema experience, you need to be open with synergizing, or at least correlating a cinema release with a streaming release.
Well, look at Curzon. Curzon's thriving. So we have Curzon Canterbury, which is local to us, and they're building a whole nother Curzon in the same city while keeping the Yeah. Yeah, while keeping the existing one open, and that just proves how much they're thriving because they've adapted, and they've been snubbed by a lot of the other cinema chains for doing that. And it's just like they need to evolve. And, and the only good thing I can kind of hope that has come out of this would be that Cineworld CEO gets the boot, and we get someone new with a fresh kind of like outlook in there to kind of like revive and go forward. Because the cinemas need to do that, and the longer they drag their heels, the worse it's going to get over the next year. At the expense of their workforce, not at the expense of the CEOs. The current CEO's taking $2 million a year at the moment for this,
right?
And it seems absolutely insane how it's all been managed.
But again, we're kind of getting sidetracked with like the guys at the top, the streaming wars, or like the streaming services versus the cinemas. What we wanted to make this video for was to really almost send our thoughts out to the workforce, because as I said, I used to work in the cinema. I loved it. I've got people that work at Cineworld at the moment. If you work in a cinema, whether it's Cineworld or another chain, we'd love to hear from you and hear what you're thinking about this.
Yeah, and if you don't, we'll link below the Cineworld Action Group, and they'll give you the best way to support them over the next few weeks.
And if you're just a film fan, you don't work in a cinema, what do you think about the fact that 25% of the UK cinemas are about to close down? I
mean, I think that's going to have a knock-on effect now, because now we're going to end up in the Tenet situation where it's basically chicken and the egg, and whether the cinemas need to open before the films come out now, or which way it will happen, because now Wonder Woman and Dune look unlikely. Because are they going to open their films to 75% of the UK market?
Yeah,
probably not. And also seeing what other chains react to this.
Yeah,
like it could be a great opportunity for like your views to kind of like have that kind of like gap in the market. But it's going to be really interesting to see how they will react, and whether even the medium kind of size releases will start to pull out now.
Yeah,
which is a shame, because Saint Maud is meant to be released, which is kind of like that kind of like mid-level horror. That was due to be released next week in Picturehouses, Cineworlds. So, like, what are they going to do? Like they've already spent their marketing budget, which is it's all a giant mess at the moment.
It is. But again, another question to just general film fans: have you been back to the cinema? And if not, is that because there's nothing on that you're wanting to see, or do you just not feel safe going back? Because going back to, I know I'm going around in circles here, but the Eat Out to Help Out thing, that encouraged people to feel comfortable going out to eat. There's been nothing like that with the art sector. Because
they need a film more than money at that point.
Yeah.
It's a shame.
Yeah, let us know what you think, and if you work for any cinema in the UK or internationally, please let us know on how you're feeling about this whole situation.
Yeah, all the best, everyone. Links are below on how to support Cineworld and all the other chains.
And next time you see us, we will actually be set up in the new studio.
Hopefully.
Until next time, I've been Brad. This is Callum. This has been the Angry Microwave. See you later.